Hey guys, this is Allison from Allylat Creations. How are you? Like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a connected, an epiphany, a mind-blown moment, a new book to read, new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are in the description box below the video. Okay, I had a real conundrum today about what I was going to do as for a video. Really big conundrum, because I have some spiritual soul stuff bubbling in my head, bubbling. But then the amazement of the last video I did last night, because I did two videos, one just happened to be really early in the morning. I remembered the next part of Blavatsky's readings happened to do with something, and I'm like, okay, this will go, it will weave itself in to the Curtis book, The Truth About Evolution and the Bible, because that video is still resonating with me from yesterday, and whoa. So go check that one out. I mean, the whole book series is incredible, but spirit syncs, and I can't let go when spirit does sync with me, so I don't ignore the signs. And here's a definite sign. So today we're going to do the Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. This is still volume 1 or close. I don't know, maybe not. No, we're not. This is also a very lengthy book. So for those of you who are new to my channel, which it seems a few are, I do a lot of, in this moment in time, bigger sectioned books. So Urantia, Owaspy, the Secret Doctrine, the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly Hall. Those are huge books, and we're tackling sections of them at a time. In between that, I do my own series on Alien Gray Agenda. That kind of weans and wanes out. I do the Hermit's Journey, where a lot of us feel very alone at this time, and how to go through the ascension, truth speaking, being around people process through short stories by Manly P. Hall and Frederick Nietzsche. I do once in a while throw in some Arthur Schopenhauer, because he's one of my favorite philosophers. I know it's weird, but he is. So I do a lot on this channel. I do between the spiritual and the esoteric, and I have a whole ton of books. Go check out my video section. My back is doing so much better, but it still hurts. And I was really just pumped up yesterday, so I don't know why. But today, we'll see how far we can get. This is probably a very lengthy chapter. I might have to break this up because her work is incredible, and it is obscenely long sections. I try to keep everything within chapters and sections to make it make sense. But sometimes I can go rambling on for almost 2 hours with her. So we're going to start the Theogony of the creative gods. Big difference between the God of all and the creative spirit. To thoroughly comprehend the idea underlying every ancient cosmology necessitates the study and a comparative analysis of all the great religions of antiquity, as it is only by this method that the root idea will be made plain. Exact science could the latter soar so high while tracing the operations of nature to their ultimate and original sources, would call this idea the hierarchy of forces. The original transcendental and philosophical conception was one. But as systems began to reflect with every age more and more the idiosyncrasies of nations, and as the latter, after separating, settled into distinct groups, each evolving along its own national or tribal growth, the main idea gradually became veiled with the overgrowth of human fancy. While in some countries the forces are rather the intelligent powers of nature, received divine honors they were hardly entitled to. In others, as now in Europe and the civilized lands, the very thought of any such force being endowed with intelligence seems absurd and is proclaimed unscientific. Therefore, one finds relief in such statements as are found in the introduction to Asgard and the Gods. I need to find this book, FYI. Tales and Traditions of Our Northern Ancestors by W.S.W. Anson. Pause. I'm going to see if I have that book. Sadly, I don't. I have some older Norse books, but not that one. I have to get it. Anywho, the author remarks on page 3, although in Central Asia or on the banks of the Indus, in the land of the pyramids, and in the Greek and Italian peninsulas, and even in the north, whether Celts, Teutons, Slavs, wondered the religious conceptions of the people have taken different forms, yet their common origin is still perceivable. We point out this connection between the stories of the gods and the deep thought contained in them, and their importance in order that the reader may see that it is not a magic world of erotic fancy which opens out before him, but that life and nature form the basis of the existence and action of these divinities. And though it is impossible for any occultist or student of Eastern esotericism to concur in the strange idea that the religious conceptions of the most famous nations of antiquity are connected with the beginnings of civilization amongst the Germanic races, he is yet glad to find such truths expressed as that. These fairy tales are not senseless stories written for the amusement of the idle. They embody the profound religion of our forefathers. Precisely so, not only their religion, but likewise their history, for a myth in Greek means oral tradition, and there's a word there, and I can't read Greek, so I apologize. Passed from mouth to mouth, from one generation to another, and even in the modern etymology, the term stands for a fabulous statement conveying some important truth, a tale of some extraordinary personage whose biography has become overgrown owing to the veneration of successive generations with rich popular fancy, but which is no wholesale fable. Like our ancestors, the primitive Aryans, we believe firmly in the personality and intelligence of more than one phenomenon-producing force in nature. As time rolled on, the archaic teaching grew dimmer, and those nations more or less lost sight of the highest and one principle of all things, and began to transfer the abstract attributes of the causeless cause to the caused effects, become in their turn causative, the creative powers of the universe. The great nations, out of the fear of profaning the idea, the smaller, because they either failed to grasp it or lacked the power of philosophic conception, needed to preserve it in all its immaculate purity. But one and all, with the exception of the latest Aryans, now become Europeans and Christians, show the veneration in their cosmogonies, as Thomas Taylor, the most intuitional of all the translators of Greek fragments, shows no nation has ever conceived the one principle as the immediate creator of the visible universe, for no sane man would credit a planner and an architect with having built the edifice he admires with his own hands. On the testimony of Damascus, they referred to it as the unknown darkness. The Babylonians passed over the principle in silence. To the God, says Porphyry, in who is above all things, neither external speech ought to be addressed, nor yet that which is inward. Hesiod begins his theogony with chaos of all things was the first produced, thus allowing the inference that it cause or producer must be passed over in reverential, sorry guys, I can't project, silence. Homer in his poems ascends no higher than night, whom he represents Zeus as reverencing. According to all the ancient theologists and to the doctrines of Pythagoras and Plato, I can't. Sorry guys, I gotta move my light a little. Plato, there we go, I can see Zeus, or the immediate artificer of the universe, is not the highest God, any more than Sir Christopher Wren in his physical human aspect in the mind of him which produced his great works of art. Homer, therefore, is not only silent with respect to the first principle, but likewise with respect to those two principles immediately posterior to the first. The ether and the chaos of Orpheus and Hesiod, and the bound in infinity of Pythagoras and Plato. Proclus says of the highest principle that it is the unity of unities and beyond the first edict, more infallible than all silence and more occult than all essence, concealed amidst the intangible gods. To what was written by Thomas Taylor in 1797, namely, the Jews appeared to have ascended no higher than the immediate artificer of the universe, as Moses introduces a darkness on the race of the deep, without even insinuating that there was any cause of the existence. One might add something more. Never have the Jews in their Bible, a purely esoteric symbolical work, degraded so profoundly their metaphorical deity as have the Christians by accepting Jehovah as their one living yet personal God. Hence Owaspy. The first, or rather one, principle was called the circle of heaven, symbolized by the hierogram of a point within a circle of equilateral triangle, the point being the logos. Thus, in the rigged Veda, wherein Brahma is not even named, cosmogony is preluded with the Hiranyagarbha. Sorry, guys, I suck at that. The golden egg, the Prajapati, Brahma later on, from whom emanate all the hierarchies of creators. The monad or point is the original and is the unit from which follows the entire numerical system. This point is the first cause, but that from which it emanates, or which rather it is the expression, the logos, is passed over in silence. In its turn, the universal symbol, the point within the circle, was not yet the architect, but the cause of the architect, and the latter stood to it in precisely the same relation as the point itself stood to the circumference of the circle, which cannot be defined according to Hermes Trismegistus. Porphyry shows that the monad and the duad of Pythagoras are identical with Plato's infinite and finite in Philebus, or what Plato calls the don't know the Greek of those two words, and I do apologize. In it is the later only the mother, which is substantial, the former being the cause of all unity and measure of all things. The duad being thus shown to be the mother of the Logos, and the same his daughter, the object of his perception, the producer, and the secondary cause of it. With Pythagoras, the monad returns into silence and darkness as soon as it has evolved the triad, from which emanate the remaining 7 numbers of the 10 numbers, which are at the base of the manifested universe. In Norse cosmogony, it is again the same. In the beginning was the great abyss, chaos. Neither day nor night existed. The abyss was Ginniganet, the yawning gulf, without beginning, without end. All Father, the uncreated, the unseen, dwelt in the depth of the abyss, space, and willed. And what was willed came into being. As in the Hindu cosmogony, the evolution of the universe is divided into 2 acts, called in the India the Prakti and Padma creations. Before the warm rays pouring from the home of brightness awake life in the great waters of space, the elements of the first creation came into view, and from them is formed the giant. How is that in India? Sorry, Ymir. Okay, so okay. I'm sorry, we're gonna pause because okay, he's okay. So I say the same thing. I really do. The Norse and the Hindus have just as much identical cosmogony, just in their cultural differences and little tweaks and twerks here and there, but it really is. Yeah. So no, I've been getting confused because we're going from India and now we're talking about the giant Ymir, which is the first willed creation from Ginniganet. Primordial matter differentiated from chaos, literally seething clay. Then comes the cow Admula, the nourisher, from whom is born Bur, the producer, who by Besla, the daughter of the frost giants, the sons of Ymir, had 3 sons, Odin. Okay, they're going to do the German version. I'm going to do the Norse version. Vili and V, or spirit, will and holiness. Compared the genesis of the primordial races in this work. This was when darkness still reigned throughout space, when the Ases, the creative powers, Daihango hands, were not yet evolved, and the Yggdrasil, the tree of the universe, of time and of life, had not yet grown, and there was as yet no Valhalla or Hall of Heroes. The Scandinavian legends of the creation of our earth and world began with time and human life. All that precedes it is from them, darkness, wherein All Father, the cause of all, dwells. As observed by the editor of Asgard and the Gods, though these legends have in them the idea that the All Father, the original cause of all, he is scarcely more than mentioned in the poems, and that is true. Not because, as he thinks before the preaching of the gospel, the idea could not rise to distinct conceptions of the eternal, but as account of its great esoteric character. Therefore, all the created gods or personal deities begin at the secondary stage of the cosmic evolution. Zeus is born in and out of Chronos time. So is Brahma, the production and emanation of Kala. Eternity and time, Kala being one of the names of Vishnu. Hence we find Odin, the father of the gods and of the Asirs, as Brahma is the father of the god and of the Asuras, and hence also the androgyny character of all the chief creative gods, from the second monad of the Greeks down to the Sitharoth Adam Kadmon. The Brahma or Prajapi Va of the Vedas and the androgyny of Plato, which is but another version of the Indian symbol. The best metaphysical definition of primeval theogony is the spirit of the Venetans, may be found in the notes of the Bhagavad Gita by Mr. T. Subba Rao. Parabrahman, the unknown and the incognizable, as the lecturer tells the audience, quote, is not ego, is not non-ego, nor is it consciousness. It is not even Atma, but though not itself an object of knowledge, it is yet capable of supporting and giving rise to every kind of object and every kind of existence, which becomes an object of knowledge. It is the one essence from which starts into existence a center of energy, which he calls logos. Pause here. If you read the Law of One, Ra speaks about the logos quite often. So this is not a new or old concept, the logos. Just putting that out there. This logos is the Sabda Brahman of the Hindus, which he will not even call Iswara, the Lord God, lest the term should create confusion in the people's minds. Oh no. Sorry, guys, I see words I can't pronounce and it's like, but it is the Avalokiteswara. Sorry, I'm trying not to butcher these things, but gotta love dyslexia and bad teeth. Of the Hindus, the verbum of the Christians in its real esoteric meaning, not the theological disfiguration. Sorry, guys. A lot of this is italicized and I can't see. It is, he says, the Guntha, or the ego in the cosmos and every other ego. It is but its reflection and manifestation. It exists in a latent condition in the bosom of Parabrahman at the time of Paralaya. During Manavatra, it has a consciousness and an individuality of its own. It is the center of energy, but such centers of energy are almost innumerable in the bosom of Parabrahman. It must not be supposed that even the Logos is the creator, or that it is but a single center of energy. Their number is almost infinite. This ego, he adds, is the first that appears in cosmos and is the end of evolution. It is the abstract ego. This is the first manifestation or aspect of Parabrahman. When once it starts into conscious being, from its objective standpoint, Parabrahman appears to it as Mula Prukti. Please bear in mind, observes the lecturer, for here's the root of the whole difficulty about Purusha and Prakti, felt by the various writers of Vedic philosophy. The Mula Prakti is material to it, the Logos, as a material object is material to us. This Mula Prakti is no more Parabrahman than the bundle of attributes of the pillar is the pillar itself. Parabrahman is the unconditioned and absolute reality, and the Mula Prakti is a sort of veil thrown over it. Parabrahman by itself cannot be seen as it is. It is seen by the Logos with a veil thrown over it, and the veil is the mighty expanse of cosmic matter. Parabrahman after having appeared on the one hand as the ego and on the other as multiprakti, acts as the one energy through the logos. Wrap your head around that. And the lecturer explains what he means by this acting of something which is nothing, though it is the all by a fine simile. He compares the logos to the sun through which the light and heat radiate, but whose energy, light, and heat exist in some unknown condition in space and are diffused in space only as visible light and heat. The sun being only the agent thereof. This is the first triadic hypostats. The quaternary is made up by the energizing light shed by the logos. The Hebrew Kabbalists give it in a shape which esoterically is identified with the Vedic. Ein Sof, they taught, could not be comprehended, could not be located nor named, though the causeless cause of all. Hence its name Ein Sof is a term of negation, the inscrutable, the incognizable, and the unnameable. They made it, therefore, a boundless circle, a sphere of which human intellect, with the utmost stretch, could only perceive the vault. In the words of one who was riddled with much in the Kabbalistic system, in one of the meanings thoroughly, in its numerical and geometrical esotericism, close your eyes and from your own consciousness of perception, try and think outward to the extremest limits in every direction. You'll find the equal lines or rays of perception extend out evenly in all directions, so that the utmost effort of perception will terminate in the vault of a sphere. The limitation of the sphere will of necessity be a great circle, and the direct rays of thought in any and every direction must be right line radii and of the circle. This then must be, humanly speaking, the extremist all-embracing concept of the Ein Sof manifest, which formulates itself as a geometrical figure, or of a circle, with its elements of curved circumference and right line diameter divided into radii. Hence, a geometrical shape is the first recognizable means of connection between the Ein Sof and the intelligence of man. This great circle, which Eastern esotericism reduces to the point within the boundless circle, is the Avaikaitswara. I don't do good with those, even as an Icelandic. The logos or verbum of which Mr. Suba Rowe speaks, but the circle or manifested God is an unknown to us except through the manifested universe as the one, though easier or rather more possible to our highest conceptions. This logos, which sleeps in the bosom of Parabrahman during Paralaya, is our ego and is latent in us at the time of sleep, which cannot cognize Parabrahman otherwise than as multiprakti. The later being a cosmic veil, which is the mighty expanse of cosmic matter, is thus only an organ in cosmic creation, through which radiate the energy and wisdom of Parabrahman, unknown to the Logos as it is to ourselves. Moreover, as the Logos is an unknown to us, as the Parabrahman is unknown in reality to the Logos, both Eastern esotericism and the Kabbalah, in order to bring the Logos within the range of our conceptions, have revolved the abstract synthesis into concrete images, into the reflection or multiplied aspects of the Logos. Brahma, Orsman, Osiris, Adam Kadmon, call it by any of these names, which aspects or manavatric emanations are the Daihan Kohans, the Elohim, the Devas, the Asham. Goodness sakes! You're going to get it. Go read it. I can't say that. done. Metaphysicians explain that the root and germ of the latter, according to Mr. Subaru, as the first manifestation of Para Brahman, the highest trinity that we are capable of understanding, which is Multiprakti, the veil, the logos, the conscious energy of the latter, or its power and light, or matter force and the ego, or the one root of self, of which every other kind of self is but a manifestation or a reflection. It is then only in this light of consciousness, of mental and physical perception, that practical occultism can throw this into visibility by geometrical figures, which then closely studied will yield not only a scientific explanation of the real objective existence of the seven sons of the divine Sophia, which is the light of the logos, but show by means of other yet undiscovered keys that with regard to humanity, these seven sons are their numberless emanations, centers of energy personified, are an absolute necessity. Make away with them, and the mystery of being and mankind will never be unriddled, not even closely approached. It is through this light that everything is created. This root of mental self is also the root of physical self. For the light is the permutation in our manifested world of Multiprakti, called Aditi in the Vedas. In its third aspect, it becomes Va, the daughter and the mother of the Logos, as Isis is the daughter and the mother of Osiris, who is Horus, and I don't know if that's a T, Mut, the daughter, wife, and mother of Amun, in the Egyptian moon glyph. In the Kabbalah, Sifra is the same as the Shinta, and is in another synthesis the wife, daughter, and mother of the heavenly man, Adam Kadmon, and is even identical with him, just as Va is identical with Brahma, and is called the female Logos. In the Rig Veda, Va is a mystic speech, by whom occult knowledge and wisdom are communicated to man, and thus Va is said to have entered the rishis. She is generated by the gods. She is the divine Va, the queen of gods, and she is associated like Sifra with the Sitharoth, with the Prayapati in their work of creation. Moreover, she is called the mother of the Vedas, since it is through her power as mystic speech the Brahma revealed them, and also owing to her power that he produced the universe through speech and words synthesized by the word and numbers. But Va being also spoken of as the daughter of Daksha, the god who lives in all the Klepas, her Mayavic character is thereby shown. During the Pralaya, she disappears, absorbed in the one all-devouring ray. Very interesting. But there are two distinct aspects in universal esotericism, Eastern and Western, in all those personations of the female power in nature, the noumenal and the phenomenal. One is it purely metaphysical aspect, as described by the learned lecturer in his notes on the Bhagavad Gita, the other terrestrial and physical, and at the same time divine from the standpoint of practical human conception and occultism. They are all the symbols and personifications of chaos, the great deep, where the primordial borders of space, the impenetrable veil between the incognizable and the logos of creation, connecting himself through his mind with Brahma, the logos, created the primordial waters. In the Kathaka, I think I said that right, Upanishad, it is stated still more clearly, Paraprakti was the universe. Bach was a second to him. He associated with her that produced these creatures and again re-entered prior Prakti. And here we may incidentally point out one of the many unjust slurs thrown by the pious and good missionaries in India on the religion of the land. This allegory is in the Satapatha Brahman, namely that Brahma, as the father of men, performed the work of procreation by incestuous intercourse with his own daughter Va, also called Senha, twilight, and Sataprupa, the 100th form, is incessantly thrown into the teeth of the Brahmins as condemning their detestable false religion. Besides the fact conveniently forgotten by the Europeans that the patriarch Lot is shown guilty of the same crime under the human form, whereas Brahma, or rather Prajapati, accomplished the incest under the form of a buck with his daughter, who had that of a hind. The esoteric reading of Genesis shows the same. Moreover, there is certainly a cosmic, not a physiological meaning attached to the Indian allegory, since Vak is a permutation of Adati and Multiprakti, chaos, and Brahma a premutation of Narayana, the spirit of God, entering into and fructifying nature. Therefore, there is nothing phallic in the conception at all. As already stated, Adati Va is the female logos, or the word, verbum, and Sifra in the Kabbalah is the same. These feminine logi are all correlations in their nominal aspect of light and sound and ether, showing how well informed were the ancients in both physical science, as now known to the moderns, and as to the birth of the science in the spiritual astral spheres. Quote, our old writer said that Va is of 4 kinds. Para. Why with these? Sorry, guys, whoever reads from these, either the Vedic stuff, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. I'm sorry. I'm not here to butcher your language, your wording. I can't project it. And it's maddening my brain. Maybe if I hear it a few times, but even like the Icelandic language, like people will, a word this big is like said this small, right? Like, I vomit on that stuff. And it's not because I willfully want to. I don't. It's just really frustrating. And I feel very embarrassed having to project words that I just can't pronounce. So I'm just going to skip all of this and just say a statement found in the Rig Veda and the Upanishads, because I could say that. Holy crap. And I do apologize. It's just maddening. In all the books that I have to read, these like crazy words that I can't project out or pronounce properly are right there. And unless you know the language and its grammar and where things are supposed to be, trust me, you guys learned English, right? It ain't easy. It ain't easy for us. It is sound speech that, again, which becomes comprehensive and objective to one of our physical senses and may be brought under the laws of perception. Hence, every kind of Valkari Vak exists in Madhanya, Pasyanti, and ultimately in its para form. The reason why the Pranva is called Va is that these 4 principles of the great cosmos correspond to these 4 forms of Va. The whole cosmos in its objective form is Vaikari, Va. The light of the logos is the Madhyama form, and the logos itself is Pasyanti form, while Parabrahman is the para beyond the nominal of all noumenal aspect of the Va. Thus, Va Shinkta, or the music of the spheres of Pythagoras, are one if we take for our example instances in the three most apparently dissimilar religious philosophies in the world: the Hindu, the Greek, and the Chaldean Hebrew. These wow, Allison, here we go. Personations. It's personation. Whatever. Sorry, guys. You see, this I didn't want to read this the other day because I wanted to enjoy my reading. And allegories may be viewed under 4 chief and 3 lesser aspects of 7 in all its esotericism. The para form is the ever subjective and latent light and sound, which exists eternally in the bosom of the incognizable. When transferred into the ideation of the logos or its latent light, it's called pasyanti. And when it becomes the light expressed, it is madhyama. Now the Kabbalah gives the definition thus: there are 3 kinds of light, and that 4th, which interpenetrates the others, the clear and the penetrating, the objective light, the reflected light, and the abstract light. The 10 Sitharoth, the 3 and the 7, are called the Kabbalah, the 10 words, Dibrim, Dabarim, the numbers and emanations of the heavenly light, which is both Adam Kadmon and Sifra, or Brahma, Parajapati, Va. Light, sound, number are the 3 factors of creation in the Kabbalah. The Parabrahman cannot be known except through the luminous point, the Logos, which knows not Parabrahman, but only Multiprakti. Similarly, Adam Kadmon, known only Shinkta, though he was the vehicle of Ein Sof. And as Adam Kadmon, he is the esoteric interpretation, the total of the number 10, the Sitharoth himself, a trinity, or the 3 attributes of incognizable deity in one. When the heavenly man or Logos first assumed the form of the crown, Kether, and identity himself with Sithra, he caused 7 splendid lights to emanate from it, the crown, which made in their totality 10 in the Brahma Pravarti. Once he became separated from, yet identical with Va, caused the 7 rishis, the 7 manas, or Prajapatis, whatever, to issue from that crown. In exotericism, one will also find 10 and 7, or either Sitharoth or Prajapati. In esoteric rendering, always 3 and 7, which yield also 10. Only when divided in the manifested sphere into 3 and 7, they form a circle with the line, the androgyny, and the swastika in the circle, or the figure X manifested and differentiated. Well, it's not technically the swastika, it looks like it the way it's drawn out here. Seriously. This will help the student to understand why Pythagoras esteemed the deity, the Logos, to be the center of unity and the source of harmony. We say that this deity with the Logos, not the monad that dwelleth in solitude and silence, because Pythagoras taught that unity, being indivisible, is no number. And this is always why it was required of the candidate who applied for admittance into a school that he should already studied as a preliminary step the sciences of arithmetic, astronomy, geometry, and music, held as the 4 divisions of mathematics. Again, this explains why Pythagoras asserted that the doctrine of numbers, the chief of all in esotericism, had been revealed to man by the celestial deities. that the world had been called forth out of chaos by sound and harmony, and constructed according to the principles of music, proportion, that the 7 planets which rule the destiny of mortals have a harmonious motion, and intervals corresponding to the musical ditems, rendering various sounds so perfectly consonant that they produce the sweetest melody, which is inaudible to us only by reason of the greatness of the sound, which our ears are incapable of receiving. And I'm going to put a pause here. So if you go back to the Law of One, and they're talking about the sub-octave, the sub-octave, and the octave, what is octaves? Octaves are vibrational frequency, the vibratory state. Music gives you a vibratory state. It gives you fluctuations in tone and sound. So they're not, Pythagoras was not that off. Insert light. In the Pythagorean Theogony, the hierarchies of the heavenly hosts and gods were numbered and expressed numerically. Pythagoras had studied esoteric science in India. Therefore, we find his pupil saying the monad, the manifested one, is the principle of all things. From the monad and the indeterminate duad, chaos, numbers form numbers, points from points, lines from lines, superficies from superficies, solids from these solid bodies, those whose elements are fire, water, air, earth, of all which transmuted, correlate, and totally change, and the world consists. And this may also, if it does not unriddle the mystery altogether, at any rate lift a corner of the veil of those wondrous allegories that have been thrown upon Va, the most mysterious of all the Brahmanical goddesses, she who is termed the melodious cow, who milked forth sustenance and water, the earth with all her mystical powers, and again she who yields us nourishment and substance, physical earth. Isis is also mystic nature and also earth, and her cow's horns identify her with Va. The later, after having been recognized in her highest form as Para, becomes at the lower of the material end of creation, Vakari. Hence she is mystic, though physical, nature with all her magic ways and properties. Again, as goddess of speech and of sound and the permutation of Adati, she is chaos in one sense. At any rate, she is the mother of the gods, and it is from Brahma and Va, as from Adam Kadmon is Sifra, that the real manifested theogony has to start. Beyond all is darkness and abstract speculation. But the Dayan Kohans, or the gods and seers, the prophets, and the adepts in general are on firm ground, whether as Adati or the divine Sophia of the Greeks, Gnostics. She is the mother of the 7 sons, the angels of the face, of the deep, or the great green one of the Book of the Dead, says the Book of Daizan, knowledge through meditation. At the beginning of every cycle of 4,320,000, the 7 or some nations had it 8. Great gods descended to establish a new order of things and gave the impetus to the new cycle. The 8th god was a unifying circle or logos, separated and made distinct from its host in exoteric dogma, just as the 3 divine hypostases of the ancient Greeks are now considered the churches of the 3 distinct personae. The mighty ones perform their great works and leave behind them everlasting monuments to commemorate their visit every time they penetrate within the Myvic veil atmosphere, says a commentary. Thus, we are taught that the Great Pyramids were built under the direct supervision when Dhruva, the then pole star, was at the lowest culmination, and the Kritika Pleiades look over his head were on the same meridian but above to watch the work of the giants. Thus, as the first pyramids were built at the beginning of the sidereal year under Dhruva Alpha Polaris, it must have been over 31,000 years ago. Bunsen was right in admitting for Egypt an antiquity of over 21,000 years, for the concession hardly exhausts truth and fact in the question. The stories told by Egyptian priests and others of timekeeping in Egypt are now beginning to look less like lies in the sight of all who have escaped the biblical bondage, writes the author of the Natural Genesis. Inscriptions have lately been found at Saqqara, making mention of 2 Sothak cycles, registered at the time now some 6,000 years ago. Thus, when Herodotus was in Egypt, the Egyptians had, as now known, observed at least 5 different Sothatic cycles of 1,461 years. The priests informed the Greek inquirer that time had been reckoned by them for so long that the sun had twice risen where it then set, and twice set where it then rose. This can only be realized as a fact in nature by means of 2 cycles of precession, or a period of 51,736 years. More Isaac shows the ancient Syrians defining their world of the rulers and active gods in the same way as the Chaldeans. The lowest world was the sublunary, our own watch by angels of the first or low order. The one that came next in rank was Mercury, ruled by the archangels. Then came Venus, whose gods were the principalities. The 4th was of the sun, the domain and region of the highest and mightiest gods of our system, the solar gods of all nations. The 5th was Mars, ruled by the virtues. The 6th, that of Bel, of Jupiter, was governing the dominions. The 7th, the world of Saturn, by the thrones. These are the worlds of form. Above come the 4 higher ones, making 7 again, since the 3 highest are unmentionable and unpronounceable. The 8, composed of 1,122 stars, is the domain of the cherubs. The 9th, belonging to the walking and numberless stars on account of their distance has the seraphs. As the 10th, Kircher, quoting More Isaac, says that it is composed of invisible stars that could be taken, they said, for clouds so massed as they in the zone that we call Va Stremnus, the Milky Way. And he hastens to explain that these are the stars of Lucifer, engulfed with him in his terrible shipwreck. That which comes after and beyond the 10th world are quaternary or Arupa world. The Syrians could not tell. All they knew was that it is there that begins the vast and incomprehensible ocean of the infinite, the abode of the true divinity within the boundary or end. Champollion shows the same belief among the Egyptians. Hermes have spoken of the Father, Mother, and Son, whose spirit, collectively the divine fiat, shapes the universe, says 7 agents, mediums, were also formed to contain the material or manifested worlds within their respective circles, and the action of these agents were named destiny. He further enumerates 7 and 10, 12 orders, which would take too long to detail here. As the Rig Vidhana, together with the Brahmananda Purana, again, guys, I'm sorry. All such works, whether describing the magic efficiency of the Rigvedic mantras or the future kaplas, are declared by Dr. Weber and others to be modern capitulations, belonging probably only to the time of the Puranas. It is useless to refer the reader to the mystic explanations, as one may as well quote simply from the archaic books utterly unknown to the Orientalists. These works explain that which so puzzles the scholars, namely that the Saptarshi, the mind-born sons of Brahma, are referred to in the Satapatha Brahma under one set of names, in the Mahabharata under another set, and in the Vayu Purana makes even 9 instead of 7 rishis by adding the names of the Bhrigu and Daksha to the list. But the same occurs in every esoteric scripture. The Secret Doctrine gives a long genealogy of rishis, but separates them into many classes, like the gods of the Egyptians, who were divided into 7 and even 12 classes, are the Indian rishis in their hierarchies. The first 3 groups are the divine, the cosmical, and the sublunary. Then come the solar gods of our system, the planetary, the submundane, and the purely human, the heroes, and the Menushi. Why I can't read those books, because I will butcher every one of them. At present, however, we are only concerned with the pre-cosmic divine gods, or the 7 builders. This group is found unmistakably in every cosmogony, owing to the loss of the Egyptian archaic documents, since according to M. Maspero, the materials and historical data on hand who study the history of the religious evolution in Egypt are neither complete nor very often intangible. In order to have the statements brought forward from the Secret Doctrine collaborated partially and indirectly, the ancient hymns and inscriptions on the tombs must be appealed to. One such, at any rate, shows that Osiris was like Brahma, Parvati, Adam, Kadmon, Orsman, and so many other logi, the chief and synthesis of the group of creators or builders. Before Osiris became the one and the highest god of Egypt, he was worshipped at Abydos as the head or leader of the heavenly hosts of the builders, belonging to the higher of the 3 orders. The hymn engraved on the votive stela of a tomb from Abydos, 3rd register, address Osiris thus: salutations to the Osiris, elder son of Sib. Thou, the greatest over the 6 gods, issued from the goddess No, primordial water, though the great favoritive of thy father Ra, father of fathers, king of duration, master in the eternity, and who, as soon as these issued from thy mother's bosom, gathered all the crowns and attached the serpent or Naja on thy head, multiform God, whose name is unknown, and who has many names in towns and provinces, coming out from the primordial water, crowned with the I can't get that, which is the serpent emblem of cosmic fire, and himself the 7 over the 6 primary gods, issued from the father mother No, and Note, the sky. Who can Osiris be but the chief Parvati, the chief Sitharoth, the chief Orsmond? That this later solar and cosmic god stood in the beginning of the religious evolution in the same position as the archangel, whose name was secret and certain. This archangel was the representative on earth of the hidden Jewish god, Michael. In short, it is his face that is said to have gone before the Jews like a pillar of fire. Burnoff says the 7 Shapens, whatever, who are most assuredly our archangels, designated also the personifications of the divine virtues. And these archangels, therefore, are certainly the Saptarshi of the Hindus, though it is next to impossible to class each with its pagan prototype in parallel, since as in the case of Osiris, they have also many names and towns and provinces. Some of the most important, however, will be shown in their order. One thing is thus undeniably proven. The more one studies their hierarchies and finds out their identity, the more proofs one acquires that there is not one of the past and present personal gods known to us from the earliest days of history that does not belong to the third stage of cosmic manifestation. In every religion, we find the concealed deity forming the groundwork, then the ray therefrom that falls into primordial cosmic matter, first manifestation, then the androgyny result, the dual male and female aspect force personified, second stage. This separates itself finally in the third into 7 forces called the creative powers by all the ancient religions and the virtues of God by the Christians. The latter explanation and metaphysical abstract qualifications have never prevented the Roman and Greek churches from worshiping these virtues under the personifications and distinct names of the 7 archangels. In the book of Drumshim in the Talmud, as a distinction between these groups is given, which is the correct Kabbalistic explanation. It says, there are 3 groups or orders of Sitharoth. First, the Sitharoth called the divine attributes abstract. Second, the physical and sidereal Sitharoth personal. One group of 7 and the other of 10. Third, the metaphysical Sitharoth, or periphrasis of Jehovah, who are the 3 Sitharoth, Kether, Choma, and Binah. The rest of the 7 being the personal 7 spirits of the presence, also the planets. The same division has to be applied to the primary, secondary, and tertiary evolution of gods in every theogony, if one wishes to translate the meaning esoterically. We must not confuse the purely metaphysical personifications of the abstract attributes of deity with their reflection, the sidereal gods. This reflection, however, is in reality the objective expression of the abstraction. Living entities and the models formed, or the divine prototype. Moreover, the 3 metaphysical Sitharoth, or the periphrases of Jehovah, are not Jehovah. It is the latter himself, with the additional titles of Adonai, Elohim, Sabaoth, and the numerous names lavished on him, who is the periphrases of the Shaddai, the omnipotent. The name is a don't know this word, and I can't pronounce it. Indeed, a too abundant figure of Jewish rhetoric, and has also been denounced by the occultists. To the Jewish Kabbalists and even the Christian alchemists and the Rosicrucians, Jehovah was a covenant screen unified by the folding of its many flaps and adopted as a substitute. One name of an individual Sitharoth being a good as another name for those who had the secret. The tetragrammaton in the infallible and sidereal sum total was invented for no other purpose than to mislead the profane and to symbolize life and generation. The real secret, an unpronounceable name, the word that is no word, but to be sought in the 7 names of the first 7 emanations of the sons of fire. In secret scriptures of all nations, even the Zohar, the Kabbalistic lore of the smallest of all, the Jewish. This word, composed of 7 letters in each tongue, is found embodied in the architectural remains of every grand building in the world, from the Cyclopean remains of Easter Island, part of the continent buried under the seas nearly 4 million years ago, then 20,000. Down to the earliest Egyptian pyramids. We shall have to enter more fully upon the subject and bring practical illustrations to prove the statements made in the text. For the present, it is sufficient to show by a few instances the truth of what was asserted at the beginning of the monograph, namely no cosmogony the world over, with the sole exception of the Christian, has ever attributed to the one highest cause, the universal deific principle, the immediate creation of our earth, man, or anything connected with these. This statement holds as good for the Hebrew or Chaldean Kabbalah as it does for Genesis. Had the latter been ever thoroughly understood, and what is still more importantly correct translated, everywhere there is either a logos or a light shining in the darkness. Truly, for the architect of the worlds is esoterically a plural number. The Latin Church, paradoxical as ever, while applying to epithet of creator to Jehovah, alone adopts a whole creole of names for the working forces of the latter. Those names betraying the secret, for if the said forces had not to do with the creation, so-called, why call them Elohim, Alhim in plural, divine workmen and energies, incandescent celestial stones, and especially supporters of the world, governors or rulers of the world, the wheels of the world, Orpheum flames and powers, sons of God, vigilant counselors, etc. It was often premised, and as unjustly as usual, that China, nearly as old as country as India, had no cosmogony. It was unknown to Confucius, and the Buddhists extended their cosmogony without introducing a personal God. It is complained. The Yi King, the very essence of ancient thought and combined work of the most venerated sages, fails to show a distinct cosmogony. Nevertheless, there is one, and a very distinct one, only as Confucius did not admit to a future life, and the Chinese Buddhists reject the idea of one creator, accepting one cause and its numberless effects. They are misunderstood by the beliefs in a personal God. The great extreme as a commencement of changes, transmitigations, is the shortest and perhaps the most suggestive of all cosmogonies. For those who, like Confucius, love virtue for its own sake and try to do good unselfishly without perpetually looking to reward and profit. The great extreme of Confucius produces two figures. These two produce in their turn the four images, these again the 8 symbols. It is complained that though the Confucianists see in them heaven and earth and a man in miniature, we can see in them anything we like, no doubt, and so it is with regard to many symbols, especially in those of the latest religions. But they who know something of occult numerals see in these figures the symbol, however rude, of the harmonious progressive evolution of cosmos and its beings, both the heavenly and the terrestrial. And anyone who has studied the numerical evolution in the primeval cosmogony of Pythagoras, a contemporary of Confucius, can never fail to find the triad, tetrax, and decade emerging from one and solitary monad, the same idea. Confucius is laughed at by the Christian biographer for taking a divination before and after the passage and represented as saying, the 8 symbols determine good and ill fortune, and these lead to great deeds. There are no immutable images greater than heaven and earth. There are no changes greater than the 4 seasons, meaning north, south, east, and west. There are no suspended images brighter than the sun and moon. In preparing things for use, there is none greater than the sage. In determining good and ill luck, there is nothing greater than the divining straws and tortoise. Therefore, the divining straws and the tortoise, the symbolic sets of lines, and the great sage who looks at them as they become 1 and 2, and 2 become 4, and 4 become 8 in other sets, 3 and 6 are laughed to scorn only because his wise symbols are misunderstood. So the author and his colleagues will scoff, no doubt, at the stanzas given in our text, for they represent precisely the same idea. The old archaic map of cosmogony is full of lines in the Confucian style and concentric circles and dots, yet all these represent the most abstract and philosophical concepts of the cosmogony of our universe. At all events, it may answer perhaps better to the requirements and the scientific purposes of our age that the cosmological essays of St. Augustine and the Venerable Bede, though these were published over a millennia later than Confucius, one of the greatest sages of the ancient world, believed in ancient magic and practiced it himself. If we take for granted the statements of Qin Yu, and he praised it to the skies in Yi Qin, we were told by his reverend critic, nevertheless, even in his age, 600 BC, Confucius and his school taught the sphericity of the earth and even the heliocentric system, while at about thrice 600 years after the Chinese philosopher, the popes of Rome threatened and even burnt the heretics for asserting the same. He is laughed at for speaking of the sacred tortoise. No unprejudiced person can see any great difference between a tortoise and a lamb, and as candidates for the sacredness, as both are symbols and no more. The ox, the eagle, the lion, and occasionally the dove are the sacred animals of the Western Bible, and the first three being found grouped round the evangelist, and the fourth, the human face in a seraph, a fiery serpent, the Gnostic Agamemnon, probably. As explained, the sacred animals and flames or sparks within the Holy Four refer to the prototypes of all that is found in the universe in the divine thought. In the root, which is the perfected cube, or the foundation of the cosmos collectively and individually. They have all an occult reference and primordial cosmic form, and its first concretions work and evolution. In the earliest Hindu esoteric cosmogonies, it is not even the demiurge who creates, for it is said that in one of the Puranas that the great architect of the world gives the first impulse to the rotary motion of our planetary system by stepping in turn over each planet and body. It is this action that causes each sphere to turn around itself and around the sun, after which action it is the Brahmanical, the solar, and the lunar Petries, the Dihan Kohans, who take change and charge of their respective spheres, Earth and the planets, to end of the Kapla. The creators are the rishis, most of whom are credited with the authorship of the mantras or hymns of the Rig Veda. They are sometimes 7, sometimes 10, when they become Prajapi, the Lord of beings. Then they become the 7 and the 14 manas, as the representatives of the 7 and 14 cycles of existence, days of Brahma, thus answering to the 7 aeons, when at the end of the first stage of evolution, they are transformed into the 7 stellar rishis, the Saptarshis, while their human doubles appear as heroes and kings and sages on the earth. I'm just going to put a pause right there. For many channels who are channeling right now, for many people who listen to a lot of that stuff, the rishis are really aspects of the masters. Your masters. The archetypes. You have your angels. Master guides. Those would be the rishis. Fun times. The ascended masters. I would lump the rishis in with the ascended masters. That's just a side note. my insert. The esoteric doctrine of the East, having thus furnished and struck the keynote, which is as scientific as it is philosophical and poetical, as may be seen under its allegorical garb, every nation has followed its lead. It is from the exoteric religions that we have to dig out the root idea before we turn to esoteric truths, lest the latter should be rejected. Furthermore, every symbol in every nation, in every national religion, may be read esoterically, and the proof furnished for its being correctly read by transliterating it into its corresponding numerals and geometrical forms by the extraordinary agreement of all. However much the glyphs and symbols may vary among themselves, for in the origin these symbols were all identical. Take, for instance, the opening sentence in various cosmogonies. In every case, it is either a circle, an egg, or a head. Darkness is always associated with the first symbol and surrounds it, as shown in the Hindu, the Egyptian, the Chaldeo-Hebrew, and even the Scandinavian system, hence black ravens, black doves, black waters, and even black flames. The seven tongue of Agni, the fire god, being called Kali, the black, as it was a black flickering flame. Two black doves flew from Egypt, settling on the oaks of Dodona, gave their names to the Greek gods. Noah lets out a black raven after the deluge, which is a symbol for the cosmic Prailaya, after which began the real creation or evolution of our earth and humanity. Odin's black ravens fluttered around the goddess Saga and whispered to her the past and the future, Mountain and Mugen. What is the real meaning of all these black birds? They are the connected with the primeval wisdom which flows out of the pre-cosmic source of all, symbolized by the head, the circle, the egg, and they all have an identical meaning and relate to the primordial archetypical man, Adam Kadmon, the creative origin of all things, which is composed of the host of cosmic powers, the creative Daihan Kohans, beyond which all is darkness. Let us inquire of the wisdom of the Kabbalah, even veiled and distorted as it is now, to explain in a numerical language an approximate meaning, at least the word raven. This is the number value of the given source measures. The term raven is used but once and taken as 678 or 113 times 6. While the dove is mentioned 5 times, its value is 71, and 71 times 5 is 355. 6 diameters, or the raven crossing, would divide the circumference of a circle of 355 into 12 parts or compartments, and 355 subdivided for each unit by 6 would equal 213. I don't know if that's a -0. I don't know what that is. Or the head beginning in the first verse of Genesis. This divided or subdivided after the same fashion by 2 or by 355 by 12 would give 213 minus 2, or the word barash, or the first word of Genesis, which is prepositional prefix signifying the same concrete general forms astronomically with the one here intended. Now, the secret reading of the first verse of Genesis being in Rosh, Barash, or head, developed gods, the heads and the earth. It is easy to comprehend the esoteric meaning of the raven once the like meaning of the flood or Noah's deluge is ascertained. Sorry, guys. Whatever the many other meanings of the umbilical allegory may be, its chief meaning is that of a new cycle and a new round, or fourth round. The raven, or the above, can't read Hebrew either, some of it I can't, yields the same numerical value as the head and returned not to the ark while the dove returned, carrying the olive branch when Noah, the new man of the new race, whose prototype is a very nice name with V's, and Manu, prepared to leave the ark, the womb of terrestrial nature, is a symbol of the purely spiritual, sexless, and androgyny man of the first three races who vanished from earth forever. Numerically, Jehovah, Adam, Noah are one in the Kabbalah. At least then, it is deity descending onto Arat, later on Sinai, to incarnate in man his image through the natural process henceforth. The mother's womb, whose symbol are the ark, the Mount Sinai in Genesis. The Jewish allegory is at once astronomical and purely physiological rather than anthropomorphic. And here lies the abyss between the two systems, Aryan and Semitic. Though built in the same foundation as shown by the expounder of the Kabbalah, the basic idea underlying the philosophy of the Hebrews was that God contained all things within himself and that man was his image, man including women as androgynes, and that geometry and numbers and measures applicable to astronomy are contained in the terms man and women, and the apparent incongruity of such a mode was eliminated by showing the connection of man and women with a particular system of numbers and measures and geometry. By the Parian time periods, which furnished the connecting link between the terms and the facts shown and perfected and mode used, it is argued that the primal cause being absolutely incognizable, the symbol of its first comprehensible manifestation was the conception of a circle with its diameter line so as at once to carry the idea of geometry, phallicism, and astronomy. And this was finally applied to the signification of simply human generative organs. Hence, the whole cycle of events from Adam and the patriarchs down to Noah is made to apply to phallic and astronomical uses, the one regulating the other as the lunar periods, for instance. Hence, too, their genesis begins after their coming out of the ark and the close of the flood at the fourth race. With the Aryan people, it is different. Eastern esotericism has never degraded the one infinite deity, the container of all things, to such uses, and this is shown by the absence of Brahma for the Rig Veda and the modest positions occupied therein by Ruda and Vishnu, who became the powerful and great gods, the infinites of the esoteric creeds ages later. But even they, creators, as the three may be, are not the direct creators or forefathers of men. The latter are shown occupying a still lower scale and are called Paryapitis, whatever. Pitris are solar ancestors, never the one infinite God. Esoteric philosophy shows that only physical man as created in the image of the deity, but the latter is but the minor gods. It is the higher self, the real ego, who alone is divine and God. That last statement needs to be highlighted because that's the truth. So, guys, I'm sorry I got frustrated and all of the above. For those of you who are new, I am dyslexic and I also have this. They come out. It's not easy for me to project words on a regular day. And I also have no back teeth either. I have a lot of teeth issues. Hence why I need to get a job that has dental insurance, because this was already a car and a house in my mouth, but they messed up and I had really bad dentists who really didn't do nice things to me. And my mouth is falling apart once again, and it is very exponentially expensive to get implants or even dentures. fun time. So I have to work with what I have, and what I have doesn't work with all these words in other languages. So please keep that in mind. I know it's very frustrating. It's frustrating for me. I like to read and not have to stop and sit there and look like a moron. That's not my objective. So please keep that in mind when I read certain books. The Theosophical is another one that, and this is a big one. And some part of Manly P. Hall's work, I also have some problems. And I'm sure if I had all my teeth and I wasn't afraid that my teeth were going to fly out of my mouth, and it has happened before, thankfully, I can edit those instances out. And sometimes why I kind of pause. A lot is to fix them. So, anywho, next time we're going to talk about the 7 creations. Excited for that one. But again, it's a lot of words that I cannot pronounce, so please just bear in mind that. But this topic is epic. It is the higher self, the real ego, who alone is divine and God. Mic drop moment. Sending each and every one of you light, love, protection, and shielding. Please have an amazing rest of your week. Please stay safe, stay sane. Check out my other work if you haven't done so already. I have a whole playlist of all different types of books. I have a lot of esoteric books. I have a whole playlist for that stuff. I got some other books that I thought I could read. I have to find versions of it that that I think you guys would love, especially if you're into Blavatsky. These things like scream, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm finding out in life I can't read without permission, and then try getting permission from these people is like, so I got to do what I got to do. Anywho, please have a great week. I will see you on the next one. And please don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe. That helps me. And if you're on the other platforms, it doesn't harm either, because it just kicks the algorithm. And even though I might get like 5 likes on a video, that's more than I usually get. Till next time, guys. Thank you so much.